he freed us, so we have to free him from going to jail.
Dennis and Branimir are working on a global campaign, not a Los Angeles campaign, not a United States campaign, not a North America campaign, but a global campaign on raising money to place an ad in the New York Times. And the ad will run in June. At the same time, the ICTY will be presenting to the UN their semi-annual report. And that New York Times ad, by the way, is just one day, it's one page, but it will be the start of a global campaign to do what the Croatian government has not done, which is to start engaging politically with diplomats around the world and start engaging with the media around the world so that the Croatian people can finally start telling their own story. It's not going to happen from Zagreb, it's going to happen from all of you. And if all of you are frustrated with the lack of storytelling and the lack of diplomacy, the lack of political will that the Croatian government has shown, the time to stop pointing the finger at them is now, and the time to just do it for yourself has arrived. If we can't do it, then shame on us. It's on us. And along those lines, one of the things that sort of bothers me when this verdict came down is the finger pointing in Croatia and Croatian people throughout the world. It's the lawyer's fault. It's the government's fault. It's this one's fault. It's that one's fault. We as a people have to stop doing that. We are not each other's enemy. We are each other's brothers. We need to unite. The people who put this verdict against General Gotovina are the United Nations and the EU, and the United Nations and the EU were on the ground from 1991 through 95, and they are the ones who we have to be pointing the finger at, not each other. The UN during this period of time had a wartime policy that treated Croatia, Bosnia, and Serbia as equal guilt in this war. They refused to this day to acknowledge that there was an aggressor, that Milosevic was the aggressor in this war. Something that is common knowledge to the whole world, they to this day refuse to acknowledge. And so when they hand down this verdict, it's a political verdict, and here is why. Hundreds of thousands of people died in the war in Croatia and Bosnia, and millions more were displaced. If General Gotovina and General Markac are not guilty, then they are. And they carry the weight of the guilt of hundreds of thousands dead and millions displaced. And that is a guilt they refuse to acknowledge and they refuse to take. It's a guilt that we need to remind them is theirs and not ours. And so with this court, they've proven through the court that they were right. You see, Gotovina is guilty. Markac is guilty. This was a civil war. It was not a war of aggression. We were right in 1991 through 95 in how we acted. And being right, now history will judge us well, and who cares how they judge the Croatian people who we know only defended themselves. And it is on us to start moving forward and changing that story. Every single time an ICTY representative goes anywhere in the world, whether it be here in Los Angeles, whether it be in New York, Melbourne, anywhere, we have to have our Croatian people there to greet them and to let them know that we know, and that we know that they are guilty and not us. And we need to let our politicians know that we know the United Nations guilty and not us. And that is how we have maybe a fighting chance on an appeal, and beyond an appeal, a chance to give the Croatian people their dignity back, because their dignity has been stolen away with this verdict. If you read the verdict, one of the biggest things the judge will tell you is that they found Gotovina guilty because of excessive shelling of Knin. The idea is that they excessively shelled areas that were non-military targets, and through that excessive shelling, they created a sense of terror that caused the Serbs to leave. Well, let me explain something to you. They know that the Serbs had been given evacuation orders by their own leadership, and they blatantly refused to acknowledge that that's why they left. The irony of that is when they had Milosevic in front of the court, to prove that Milosevic was guilty of being a war criminal and genocidal, they showed that he, even against his own people, ordered an evacuation of Knin and that area. So in one case, it suited them to say that the evacuation of the Serbs was the Serbs' fault. But in the Gotovina case, no, that's not why they left. They left because they were being excessively shelled. Excessively shelled of non-military targets. Well, we've already had experts go look at the papers. Not my papers, not Milošević's papers, who's the lawyer, not Zagreb papers, the papers of the ICTY. And here's what the papers will tell you. 1,000 shells hit Knin. 950 of them hit a military target. 50 of them hit non-military targets. So excessive shelling out of 1,000 shells, 50 is what they constitute as excessive shelling of non-military targets. Out of those 50 shells that hit non-military targets, 43 of them hit an empty field with nobody around. We're standing in front of an empty field. 43 of them landed in an empty field. Nothing happened. The other 7 did not hurt or kill anybody, but they say that was the excessive shelling that is why they have a ruling against Gotovina for creating this idea of terror. How did they prove that the Serbs were terrified? They brought in 3 Serbian witnesses who told them, yes, we were terrified, that's why we left. The Serbians actually were not lying. They were terrified. They were shelled, and they did leave. But what the ICTY in their paper to the public didn't tell you is that the reason those 3 Serbs were terrified of the shelling, they happened to live next door to a military installation. So of course they were going to be terrified. They were next door to a military installation, which was a legal target. These are the things that are not out there in the media. These are the things that are not out in the public. These are the things that we collectively have to take it upon ourselves to let the world know, and we will. But we can't do it 1 or 2 or 7 or 10. We have to do all of us. One of the things that these guys did that I think is brilliant is they said, we're not going to ask 2 rich guys to give us $30,000 each and run this ad, because then it's really 2 rich guys who are paying for it and it's their voice. They said, let's get $10 from everybody. $10 from 6,000 people around the world. So it's not just the money, it's our voice. We all contribute. And that's what we have to do, and we have to urge each other to do. And while we're doing that, we have to know what we're talking about. So I urge you to learn a little bit about the case, so that when you have a conversation, you'll have an intelligent conversation. The website that's going to be coordinating all this is freecroatiangenerals.com. All this information will be there. Learn about it. One of the things that we also here in the United States have to do is we have to show how the conflict 91 to 95 is relevant today. And let me tell you how it's relevant today. Today as we speak, there's another butcher in another part of the world. His name is Gaddafi. He's the butcher of Libya. Milosevic was the butcher of the Balkans. His people are standing up against him with air support by the United States. I think we need to point out to the Libyan freedom fighters in Libya that maybe it's better that they put their guns down and that they don't fight, and that they let the United States send in their troops to do their fighting for them. Because if the Libyan fighters do their own fighting, I think in 10 years they might be waiting, a court might be waiting for them, just like a court was waiting for our generals. And why that's a powerful statement here in the United States, for those of us who live here, we all know that American people are a little bit tired of going to other wars and other places around the world and being the world's policemen. And we need to show that what the Croatian people did was the right thing. We did our own fighting for ourselves. We didn't ask anybody to come do our fighting for us. And it sends a terrible precedent to show that when you do your own fighting for yourself, you liberate your own country against a butcher like Milosevic, you're going to end up in a court. And that's a message that U.S. diplomats can understand, U.S. politicians can understand, the U.S. public can understand. And so when we go forward, we have to go forward intelligently, and we have to go forward with the idea that we're going to do this the way we should have been doing it all these years, and we're not going to count on the Croatian government, we're going to do it ourselves. And the last thing I want to leave you with is this sort of skepticism that I know exists, this fear that we can't do it. I ask you, in August of 1991, when the Croatian people were fighting with hunting rifles against jets, tanks, mortars, and all the weapons of the former Yugoslavia, did anybody give them a chance? Did anybody think that Croatia could actually win this war? Not a person in the world. It's why they took the side of Milosevic, because they wanted this war to go away. They wanted one guy to deal with. Sorry, Croatian people, too bad. But the Croatian people showed a will that nobody expected, and that was unbelievable, and that was courageous. And just like they did that with the battle on the battlefield, we need to do that in the battlefields of diplomacy, in the battlefields of politics. And if we think Croatia is important enough to do it, we'll do it. If we don't, we'll just complain about it. Once again, I urge you to support these guys. Thank you for coming today, and let's do our best. I think we can do it. Thank you.